Hi and welcome to the podcast. You're having tea with Alice. This week's episode is with Matt Lieb, who is the co-host of the podcast Pod Yourself a Gun, now Pod Yourself The Wire, which is on the same Pod Yourself a Gun feed. They are Sopranos and then The Wire Rewatch podcast, which is just a delight to listen to. And I talk about it in this Tea with Alice with Matt about how I got into listening to it. And I think it's a worthwhile story listening to. We talk about quite a lot about parenting at the beginning of the podcast, and then a little bit about cultural conflicts. And look, I had this kind of urge when I had a baby not to make everything that I talk about be parenting, except in the way that, like, if you're doing a PhD, obviously you're going to be having that topic come up because it shapes the way that you think. But I didn't want to have it change who I am or the way that I approach things. But I feel like this is such an interesting conversation. We have such interestingly different perspectives, despite having quite a lot of shared kind of points of history. Matt is a cross-gender twin as well. We both have Jewish heritage, and yet we've had such different lives and have such different perspectives. I hope you really enjoy listening to this podcast. I loved having the conversation, and do look up Pod Yourself a Gun on your podcast catcher. I will be in Edinburgh for a month doing my show Twist at 8:30 p.m. at the Underbelly Bristow Square, if you like that. If you want to read the Dancy Lagarde Reader, it is now more than 210% funded, but it's a book that I will be writing. It's due for me to submit in September, so it is happening. It's fully funded. If you would like a copy, go to unbound.com and write Alice Fraser in the search bar, because I guarantee if you write Dancy Lagarde, you will misspell it, because I wrote Dancy Lagarde as the funniest name I could think of to say, and I wrote it as the funniest name that I could think of for me to read, and I never expected anyone else to ever read that name, and so it is spelled in a way that is not intuitive, and it's going to exist in the world of the Dancy Lagarde Reader on unbound.com. Also patreon.com/Alice Fraser if you want to support this podcast, if you want to have a salon with me, which is where we get in a little room and have a chat on Zoom or in real life. I'll be doing a few of them live in Edinburgh for Patreon supporters. And I also do a weekly book club, which is a no homework book club, so you don't have to do any reading in advance. We just read something together and then we talk about it. Or my writers meetings, if you've ever wanted to write something, whether it's a musical or a movie or an academic text, we write together for an hour, and then we do a workshop for an hour, and I have found them just so delightful, and so many different people doing so many different things. It's just a really beautiful part of my life now, really. So the writers meetings available at patreon.com/Alice Fraser. At the moment you get everything if you subscribe at the $1 a month level. I will start figuring out how to price the various things at some point, but basically I took down all of the paywalls under, above the $1 a month thing during the pandemic, and I haven't yet figured out how to put them back, and at the moment I'm real busy, so come along and enjoy my failure at capitalism, the writers meetings, the book club, and of course you can pay more if you want to, but also if you cannot and don't want to pay me money, you can just support this podcast by sharing it with your friends, talking about it with people who you think would be interested in it, and tweeting about it, or Facebooking about it, or Xing about it, or whatever the social media thing is to do these days. Just spread the word. That's another great way to support the podcast. Or if you don't want to even do that, just listening is sufficient, and I'm very grateful for it. You can also watch it on youtube.com. That website has my face on it now, with the Tea with Alice's. You are listening to Tea with Alice. I'll talk to you again next week. For the listener at home, I did radio for a while, and they always used to say you should say the listener, so that they feel like you're talking to them personally and like they're all alone in the world. And I've always thought that, like, that's the opposite of what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I love that. I just call them the hog. For all the piggies at home who are currently just slurping up all the slop that we have poured into the trough for the piggies, you're welcome. And then I start, and then I keep going.
That's a beautiful way to make people feel welcome.
I feel like, it's a singular pig. Sure, that might feel like an insult, but like pigs amongst other piggies, all at the trough lined up together like a family, eating the slop. I feel like that is more inviting. I mean, who doesn't want to pig out on their favorite content,
Yeah, and looking through the farmhouse window, it was difficult to tell who were pigs and who were men.
That's exactly. George Orwell. Did he say that? I don't know. It sounded
Something like that.
it sounded good.
So, who are you, for the listener? Who are you and what are you drinking?
I am Matt Lieb. I am a comedian from Los Angeles, and I am drinking right now a coffee because it's 11:30 where I am in Los Angeles. So I have like this. I don't even know how many liters or whatever this is, but it's enough coffee that it can last for 3 hours of just casual sipping. Yeah, kind of gets me through most of my day.
That's an
Pretty
extraordinary amount of coffee.
Yeah, I also have a shake. So this is, it's got banana, it's got frozen berries like blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, a little bit of protein powder, some oat milk, and big cubes of ice. And then I just, put it in a blender. And then I drink it. And this is my food.
You didn't do the gesture for putting in a blender. You did the gesture for stirring with your fingers.
I did. But it was backwards. It's, this. Is this blender?
Yeah, that's a much better impression of a blender.
Listen, I know that you're from Australia. And over there, everything, it turns counterclockwise when you flush the toilet. And, your blending thing is from the bottom. But in America, we blend from the top down. That's how we roll. Anyways.
I mean, that could be a metaphor for the ways in which you believe that the Constitution dictates the order in your society when all good order comes from the bottom down. But let's return to the smoothie at hand. That's a very healthy smoothie, a very LA smoothie.
Yes, it is. It is. It's my wife. She makes smoothies every morning, and sometimes she makes a little bit for me. This is her recipe, although I think anyone who's making a breakfast smoothie would be making something similar to this. Although some people, I think in LA, there's always a green in there, like a kale or some sort of sweet grass or lemongrass or something with chlorophyll in it, and I just kind of want a filling, drinkable food to get me through the day, or at least the beginning of the day. Yeah.
So it's not your health consciousness that's driving this smoothie consumption. It's just spillover, overflow health consciousness.
Yeah, it's overflow health consciousness for sure from Francesca's end, but it's also just overworked. It comes from a place of being overworked and too busy to eat because of like work, and then also we have a 9-month-old baby. And so we're always on the go, and it's just like, when do you get to sit and eat? When do you get to do anything where you're not doing 3 things at once? So that's where that comes from for me.
Excellent. And what are you wrestling with other than your all liquid diet?
I'm wrestling with. I mean, right now I'm wrestling with. I'm like, knee deep in baby stuff. That's my big thing is dealing with my infant daughter. Although I don't know if she's an infant. I don't know what counts as infant anymore. She's 9 months old. She just started crawling, and she's in daycare, but only for a few, like 1 wake window, which is about 3 hours. She goes to daycare. We live 2 blocks away from our daycare, and because we both work from home, we haven't yet just done the thing that most working parents do, which is drop your kid off, go to the office to work for 8 hours, and then come back at the end of the day. And that's what you do. You have no choice in the matter. You have to go to work. Because we live so close and we work from home, we're really peeling that Band-Aid off very slowly, making it extra painful and harder.
I don't know. I'm on the end of the spectrum of just like milk and love. And
yeah.
to me, that it seems sort of, I don't know, it's a tricky line to walk because it's so existential having a baby.
Right.
And making a person and bringing them up. And this part of their lives, which they are not going to remember, is nonetheless like laying down the track work of their soul.
Sure.
Of love and security and all of that.
Yeah.
It just feels like so barbaric to just thrust them into the arms of an institution.
Yeah.
Before they're capable of articulating their needs.
Yeah,
and so
you're right.
The result for me is that I end up doing everything at the same time and kind of half-assing everything.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my wife would 100% agree. And so for her, it's the reason why we're not, just thrusting our child into the arms of an institution. Is because we feel that we don't have to. I mean, we technically can still take care of her. It's just like, it's nice to have this wake window, this 3 hours in the middle of the day where we can get some work done and not have to look after the baby and whatnot. So she would agree. I would say I'm like halfway with you. I pretty much agree with that. I mean, these are formative, moments. I mean, months. I mean, this is her brain is developing. She's becoming a person. A lot of her brain chemistry is probably going to be determined by how she is treated in these months. At the same time, I look at my own childhood. I mean, I don't remember being a baby, but both my parents worked, and we were, in daycare very early on, and I turned out all right, except for the heroin addiction for a little bit, but like outside of that, I pretty much am normal. I'm clean now, so I think that kind of evens out with the being addicted to heroin for a few years back then.
Yeah, it is a really interesting conversation, and it's super fraught as well because most people don't have a choice. If you want to keep a roof over your baby's head and feed your baby, which are obviously the most important things, they come above, your baby's long term, how they're going to feel when they're alone at night when they're 23. That comes above it, the fact that they are going to survive to the age of 23 because you are keeping a roof over their head and
right.
food in their mouths or your mouth if you're breastfeeding, I guess, then into their mouth. Interestingly, my baby is only okay with me stealing food off her plate because I think she's like, yeah, it's coming back round.
She's like, I know where this is going and you're only making the milk better. Yeah. I love that.
Whereas anyone else trying to steal food from her plate just is met with absolute outrage.
I love that. It's just, I'm sorry, are you going to breastfeed me now? Is that it? Because if you're not, then step the fuck off. I assume your baby talks like that.
Yeah, that my babe's a real thug. But it is, it's like one of those magic eye pictures. When I look at her, it's either I can only see one. It flicks second by second between like a beautiful Botticelli angel with a cherubic gorgeousness about her, or like a bouncer. There's no middle ground on my baby where she just looks fine. She either looks like really menacing or just like angelic. I don't know if that's all babies.
It's the same. Our baby either looks like, a Daisy or Don Corleone. And there's no in between. It's just like, oh, she's so cute. And, oh, she's about to make me an offer I can't refuse. So, yeah, I mean, she has two modes right now, which is essentially like cute and curious and loving, and then just kind of mad and clingy in a way where, like, if you're not with her, she will fucking let you know that she's dying. Like, she'll be like, I'm dying, you're killing me. It's like, it's pretty wild to watch. I've never seen a baby martyr before. But apparently it exists. Yeah.
So that's basically the thing. You're logisticking your way through this process and kind of bouncing between the kind of practicalities and then the existential chasm
Yeah.
that is parenthood. Do you have
Yeah,
any
yeah.
guiding principles for yourself that you can kind of use to make decisions when you can't make decisions?
I mean, a guiding principle? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just like I I don't I wouldn't say I have like a guiding principle. I think it's just a general, if I had it my way, a general kind of relaxed nature as to like, hey, you know what? Babies throughout time and throughout the world all live with different tolerances for things and different material situations, right? So it's like every time I think like, oh man, we don't have enough money, to get this, perfect crib for the baby that would be so perfect, and it would be, like great. There's no bars. It's just, it's mesh, and so she won't hit her head when she's trying to roll around and stuff. Every time I think, I'm like, yeah, but like, there's a lot of babies that don't have that stuff, and like, I try not to beat myself up about like what the perfect situation, quote unquote, is for a child, and realize that that you're never going to know what is the thing that permanently traumatizes the baby and rewires their brain. Like, you could try to be perfect. You could try to do everything right, everything, to let the baby know it's loved and cared for and it can count on you. And like one little fucking, time that you were late to pick her up from daycare, or she fell and you weren't there to catch her. And forever, that could be the thing where baby's like, I'm
Or the
alone
fact
in
that
this world.
you're unrealistically perfect and she'll never live up to you. If you manage to
Right.
get it all right, then, she's going to face down her own adulthood as,
Yes.
deeply, deeply insecure at ever
Yes.
being able to
Yes.
live up to your perfect example. Yeah,
It,
I agree.
yeah. So I just try to like, I guess my guiding principle would be like, try not to beat yourself up about being, about what you consider to be the perfect situation for your child, because you don't actually know what is going to be the thing that eventually leads them to, start an OnlyFans. And that's fine if they want to, in the future, who knows? Everyone's probably going to do OnlyFans. So that's more just like a symptom of capitalism and whatnot. But I'm just saying, it's easy to blame yourself and to look into little things and go like, this could fuck them up forever. And it's a lot better to live your life going like, I'm doing my best. Hopefully, it all works out.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. My dad always tells this story about how when Mum was pregnant with us, not that's not a royal we. I have a twin brother. Um,
I have a twin sister.
hey, high five!
High five. I'm also a twin. Cool.
Hey.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, when Mum was pregnant with us, he was like, "Oh, what do we need to get? Do we need a crib or something?" And Mum said, "It's okay. We can just pull out a drawer and put some towels in to line
I
it."
love that.
And then we ended up just sleeping in the bed with them for like a year, and then
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, listen, I like that attitude a lot. And I feel like it's so easy now to not have that attitude. Like, what I mean is that everywhere you look now, because of social media, there's some parent trying to give you like the advice that will change your life or whatever, some clickbaity title. If you're not doing this, you're hurting your baby. And so it's very, you get into the minutia of planning every single detail of the baby's like life, that you if you have like something that you haven't thought of, like, oh fuck, where's the baby gonna sleep, rather than going like, oh, we'll work on it, yeah, we'll figure it out, I don't know, for now it'll be in a, we'll put her in a box and make it nice and comfy and whatnot, and then we'll get a bassinet, I don't know. Instead, people like freak out and they go, I'm the worst parent in the world, and no, a baby is not supposed to, because you can Google, can I put baby in box, and you will find 1,000 different websites that all tell you why the baby will die because of what you have done. There's like every single thing you Google plus baby, it'll tell you how that object will kill the baby.
So this is really interesting. When I left the hospital and they, send the people around to check on you and to make sure the house is safe and to make sure that you're not living on an explosive or anything like that, and to check that the latch in. So it's the Australian government sends midwives to your house for a couple of weeks after you give birth to make sure that you're doing okay and the baby's doing okay. Mainly that the baby's doing okay. They kind of don't give a shit about you. They're like, how are you? And you're like, bleeding a lot. And they're like, how's the baby? But it's
the government does that?
Yeah. So I gave birth through the public system, and that was one of the things that they offer.
Our country sucks. I fucking hate it here. I hate it here. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. I'm just like, okay. No, yeah, that's good. You live in communism, I guess. Oh, I guess the communist Australians with your checkups from doctors paid for by the government. Sorry, keep going.
I'm so sorry. They come to measure your baby and to check that you're all right and that you're not. Basically, they ask a few questions about your mental health, that you're not, going into serious postpartum depression, and you can still look after the baby and all that.
In America, after you give birth, a businessman kicks you out with his foot from the hospital. He just I don't even know what his job is other than to kick you out with his foot.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Sorry, man. I spent 4 days in the hospital after giving birth, and then I walked out and they waved.
They waved?
Yeah, they didn't ask me for any money.
Oh, I'm sorry, but you were saying.
I was saying that it was a really interesting thing, because the official health advice is that you shouldn't have the baby in the bed with you,
right?
That you shouldn't co-sleep, that you should have the baby next to the bed in a crib, maybe a crib that's attached to the bed with one of those, no gap, but just so that you don't roll over the baby in your sleep, and that this is a danger. So don't share the bed with the baby. Don't co-sleep. That's the official advice, and every single one of these very nice women who came to check on me and tell me not to co-sleep with the baby said, don't sleep with the baby. But when you do...
Right.
Here's the safe way to do it.
Yes.
And I kind of always had it in my head that I was going to do that. I was going to co-sleep because my mum had twins, and she said the only way that she got any sleep in the first year of our lives was that she was co-sleeping, and if one of us woke up, she'd just roll over and pull out a boob. So she didn't have to get up and pick us up and feed us and do all of that. And she said it was like, if she'd had to get up every time in the night that one of us woke up, she would have died.
Right.
And so in my head, I was like, oh, this is the hack, right? Yeah. But then you think, oh no, am I gonna roll over on my baby? Am I gonna, and I don't know. Maybe there are, maybe if you're really exhausted, maybe if you're medicated, maybe if you're in like a bed that happens to be a whirlpool. But I was just so aware of her, like you're just so conscious of the baby.
Yeah, I think that is normal.
I mean, I think at the beginning I would say I would sleep basically underneath her with my arms up and her little feet touching my shoulder so that she could kick me in the face most optimally because I was worried about rolling over on her. And then I just kind of... After a month or two, I was like, it's fine. It's, I realized that wasn't going to happen. And I don't know if this is something I should be talking about publicly. I'm sure I'm going to get commentary on this, that of course this is a terrible thing, and I might have at any time rolled over and squished her. But I just feel, it felt to me like the right way to do it. And I don't know if there's any other way to parent other than what feels right.
I agree with that completely. I mean... Yeah, co-sleeping it's like one of the many things that you get told not to do with the baby because it increases the risk of SIDS or whatever. And, the truth of it is that most people I know did co-sleeping. My sister has twins. My twin sister has twin girls. And she... tried the same thing, tried not co-sleeping because they said don't do it, and it was just literally fucking impossible to be a functioning person and not have the baby in the bed next to you, and both babies as well, because they were also keeping each other up. I mean, with twins, it's a whole other fucking thing. I'm like so glad I just have one baby. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, the only thing you know, it's just when people listen, I don't mind medical advice of like, here is, we've compiled the statistics, and statistically it is safer to not do that. And if you want to avoid the chance of doing that, here is, so don't co-sleep. What I hate is the amount of kind of mommy, daddy, parent advice that you see passed off as like scientific. Usually passed off by like influencers as being like the right way to do it, the correct way, and that shit like gets in your head because you start thinking like, wait, am I bad? Maybe I'm bad, and it's hard to not think that way when you're constantly fucking up, because that's what parents do. We constantly fuck up.
Well, I think this is going to be a fairly parenting heavy episode, but one of the things that really strikes me about statistical stuff, and the thing that I try to remind myself about statistical stuff, is that what is good for society, statistically speaking, may not be the right thing for you personally, individually. So, for example, the statistics on co-sleeping, if you remove some complicating factors, like, for example, being heavily medicated, those statistics change significantly. So there are a few things that you can do to really like shift those stats in your favor. Totally. So looking at the statistics and questioning the statistics and like looking at them from different angles, because if COVID taught us nothing else, it's that statistics can be used to support almost anything that you want to say, even something that is got nothing to do with what the statistic is speaking to.
Yes. I learned that from COVID, and I learned it from The Wire. The Wire, anyone can juke the stats to make things sound good for, political reasons or for whatever, misinformation reasons you want. But the truth of it is a lot more murky and a lot less based on some sort of like objective, statistical analysis. Things are different.
Yeah, and so you look at, I didn't have the best birth experience, in part because what was best for everyone was to move me through the hospital system as quickly as possible.
Right.
But what would have been best for me was probably to like chill for another couple of days and do it at a kind of a slower pace. So that's a really, you sort of think, okay, what's good for everyone versus what's good for me, and at which points am I going to act in the public interest, and which points am I going to focus on me and my family and be that kind of fuckhead squeaky wheel who's like, no, actually, I want to do it my way. And you just kind of have to, it's like, it's an exhausting thing, I think.
Yeah.
In the same way, is one of the things I've been thinking about, the way that I choose to parent, which I think would be unsustainable with any other kind of job than the job that I have, is that like most people make the decision to, they take maternity leave for a year, and then at the end of the year they go back to work and they choose either full-time or part-time. They make that decision once, and then that's the thing. They take their kid into daycare every day, or 3 days a week, or 2 days a week, or whatever it is that they've decided, and that's the decision made. And I think even if it's a really hard decision, you don't want to put your baby in daycare, you feel weird, they're not old enough, you don't, all of that stuff, even if you feel that torment of it, you've made the decision. Whereas I think you probably, similarly, you have to make the same decision every day.
Yep.
You make, and in some ways it's this like incredible privilege that I get to choose how many hours of babysitting I'm going to get today, how many hours of writing, how much time I'm going to spend with her, how clingy she is today, whether she's teething. Okay, I'm not going to get any work done because even if the babysitter's here, she's just going to be running in, like that kind of daily micro adjustment. It feels like, I don't know. I can't. I feel happy that that's what I have to do, but every fucking day it's exhausting.
Yeah, it's yes. I thrive in environments where I have clear boundaries. Endless choice fucking kills me. Like endless choice, the idea that every day, I can be like, today I'm gonna pick her up at 1:30 instead, so that I can, it's like just, force me into a schedule. That is for me. I need structure, and so like it is, as you say, it is a privilege to be able to, work from home and to have these options available. But I mean, these kinds of options don't serve my mental health as much as I'd like it to. I mean, yeah, when COVID happened and everyone was like, oh, it turns out you can just work from home. Why are you going in office? The offices suck. And as someone who, before COVID, well, I my last office job was a few months before COVID happened. And then, but before that, I'd done a lot of work from home as like a comedian and a fucking podcaster and shit. I've been working from home. And I got no sympathy from people when I would say like, oh, but offices are kind of fun though, right? Everyone would be like, what are you talking about? The office sucks. And I'm like, no, I like offices. I like going to a place. You got a key card, you got a key card, and then you go in and there's like croissants. You can just eat them. Nobody, and then you go to your desk, you sit there, and sometimes you're working, but sometimes you're just vibing, you're just like, what's on the internet and stuff. And, you go home and realize that was the best day of your life. You know what I mean? No, I'm just saying, I feel like I'm someone who, if the office is nice enough and, as long as it's not a stressful workplace, I'm pretty like, I like going to a place, especially now with a kid. I'd love to be forced to have the decision taken out of my hands. I listen to the fucking terrestrial radio now. I'll tell you this. The idea of like every time I get into my car being like, all right, what playlists am I going to listen to? Or what song do I want? Nowadays I just turn on the radio and I'm like, give me top 40 whatever. And, I'll listen to an oldies station and it's all the songs from my childhood. And I'm like, fuck yeah. I haven't thought about, Papa Roach in a long time. I'm glad I'm listening to some Papa Roach right now. Cut my life into pieces, Like the idea of having the ability to choose everything, every little decision can be customized by me. I just like, it's stressful. I want someone to make decisions for me.
Well, so I think this is a really interesting thing, because currently the world is pushed and pushed and pushed towards more of that, more of choice, or the illusion of choice, because the choice is then dictated by algorithms, which is then dictated by identity categories. Basically that so I'm sort of trying to figure this out, because on one hand, I know that identity politics has been a really powerful force for good in the world. Sure. It's changed so many things, and ganging up with other people who are like you on a particular vector and using that power to enact change in the world is a wonderful thing. But on the other hand, in an age where we have algorithms and stuff, it feels like sorting yourself into little boxes so they can target marketing at you better. And particularly, like, who are you? Tell me what you are. Identify yourself. So much of my life as a weirdo, as an outsider, as a weird little Buddhist kid being brought up in like suburban Sydney, so much of my identity is refusing to go into identity boxes. My brother and I were bullied at primary school because we refused to join the girls group and the boys group because we wanted to hang out with each other. So it was me and Hen and Henry's best friend Annie Jolliffe, who was a girl but played the drums, and Mike Clay, who's now a TV producer but was like a circus kid and a bit fey, probably ADHD. But like that was our little gang, because we didn't want to fit in the categories, and that like as the front foot of my identity is like I resent it when I'm booked on a women's bill because I'm like, fuck you, that's not what that's not what's interesting about me.
Right.
You know, so it's not what I'm interested in about myself. If you asked me what the top 10 things about myself that I thought were worth noting, I don't think woman would fit in that top 10. So, like, why are you booking me on a comedy bill because of it?
Right.
It feels... I really resent it.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I feel like identity politics there's two ways identity politics can go. One is, at least in the United States, identity politics are essentially thrust on you if you're a person of color, you're in a marginalized group. It's like, the other
you
people
don't get
are
to
labeling
choose the
you.
identity.
You don't get, right. You're not choosing any identity. You're the identity. The identity is either, blatant, it's on your skin, or it's in your name, or it's in how you dress and whatnot, with your religion and all that stuff. Like America has a long and illustrious history of doing identity politics to people. Nowadays, that's no different. Nowadays, the only difference is now with kind of the focus on identity politics from from years and years of America and our government forcing identities upon people and labels upon people. People are now, I think, more proudly labeling themselves as these different things. And because of that, there's this really insidious marketing strategy and, what was the Cambridge Analytica thing they were doing with Facebook and they basically were like figuring out ways to see what lifestyle brand you were as a human being and how they could sell you on some fucking wacky shit based on that.
I mean, the specific awfulness of Cambridge Analytica was checking by your identity category what would make you the angriest, because anger was the best prompt for more engagement, as opposed to, the thing that you joined Facebook for, which was finding out when your friend from university was getting married. That.
Exactly. And how
that
you
kind
can
of
interrupt the wedding.
Yeah, that became secondary to this, here's a thing that'll piss you off.
Right. And I agree completely that the way in which I think identity has been appropriated by some are good faith actors. I mean, I understand the people who are doing the women's showcase. They're coming from a good place, they think, and the problem is that it is they don't know that they're talking down to you. And so, you know what I mean? They don't know that they are putting you in a category. They think they're doing good, which is almost more infuriating, is when, a liberal do-gooder tries to be like, see, I am good because I am placing you in this category.
And they are doing good. So, one of the great things about being on a women's only bill is that you are reminded about the diversity among female performers, because you rarely get booked more than one in an evening. Or, I mean, that was when I was starting out. It was rare that there would be even one, and then there was at least one. And now we're starting to get into the place where there's multiple women on a bill, and they suddenly realised that if you get multiple women on a bill, they go backstage and start talking about the rapists, and then they backed off that a bit, and now they've started to bring it back. But it is they're and it is good for an audience to see a bill of all different women doing all different things and remind themselves that female comedians are not a monolith. And so it's not that these things aren't good. It's just that I'm always my hackles go slightly up when a political movement is too cleanly able to mesh with capitalism.
100%.
The bit of feminism that survived was the bit that let all women into the workplace and, sold you shoulder pads and high heels and sexy bitch lipstick.
Right.
And the bit of feminism that didn't do quite so well was the bit where we're like, how do we value women's work in a society where all of the work that gets done in society rests on the shoulders of care workers. Can we figure out how much that ought to be worth? No. That should still be done for free by women, because their biology tells them that they ought to.
Right.
That gets pushed off into the corner because that doesn't quite cleanly mesh with the kind of girl boss glittery hat that says, I'm a bitch and I don't care.
Yeah. No, now it's just they're selling you pink chains for you to be chained to your job. It's like, but it's chains for women, and it's like, cool, that's good. Now I can be a boss bitch.
Gender neutral deodorant sold to you by Dove, who also sells the your vagina's not the right color stuff. It's
Yeah, I mean, my hackles go up for any kind of essentialism, I guess, whether it's identity essentialism or race essentialism or class essentialism. Anytime people are doing a clean, this is the only thing that matters, race is the only thing that matters, class is the only thing that matters, gender is the only thing that matters. Every time there's that, I feel like that is how you see things. That is when things get marketed. That's how I see people getting sold stuff. And so
well, that's where statistics lie, right? That's where you can have a statistic that says this is meaningful, and you're like, yes, it is. But also, if you turn it 3 degrees to the left, the light comes through it at a different angle and illuminates something completely different.
Any other factor.
Forget that.
Right, but then your statistics are useless, because then you realize that we're all individuals. Eventually so many factors happen that you have just mapped the genome of a specific human being, and it's like, well, I can't sell just to that guy. I got to sell to guys like that. And I mean, who knows? At some point they will be able to just get a laser beam in your brain and tell you exactly what kind of shoes you want. But it is I find it to be all that stuff to me is just well-meaning, but I don't trust it, because I feel like, I hate using the words like virtue signaling, but it all feels like a ploy. It's like when when all the conservatives in America decided to fucking cancel Bud Light because a trans woman, influencer was had some sort of sponsor deal or whatever. Not even it wasn't like she was this is the face of Bud Light. It was literally one of many influencers who get, sponsored by whatever product, and they sell a product. Everyone went fucking crazy, and they're like, we're going to crush Bud Light cans. We're going to shoot them with guns, and fucking, I'm only drinking American beer and all that stuff. And what annoyed me about it was just the analysis was completely, it was just, completely stupid. It's just dumb guys being like, I hate trans, and it didn't look outside of that in any way. Cause me personally, I'm like, yeah, I don't trust any fucking brand who's trying to sell me on the good things they support, because I just think that they are trying to sell me beer. They're like, oh, you're someone who, Matt, you like Jews. Well, Jews love Bud Light. I'd be like, fuck you. You know what I mean? And so it's annoying, because on the one hand, I want to say fuck any brand for virtue signaling, the cops, with fucking pride banners on or whatever, I mean, cops here in America are a brand. But on the other hand,
it's better that than the opposite.
yeah, right. The opposite is worse. It's worse when, Target or whatever, backs down and goes oh, never mind. We don't, there's no more pride section. We're going to have, no gays at Target. That obviously is a worse thing. So it's it leaves you stuck between two fucking angry positions, and none of them are, and both of them are essential, and both of them are about how you can both of them are about how you can use your dollar to vote for what you believe in. And I'm like, stop trying to take my fucking dollar. How about that?
Yes,
How about
the
that?
idea that the only political power you have is through your purchasing choices is a very strong signal that you have been politically disenfranchised. Because if you felt like you could
100%.
actually change the world through political action, then it wouldn't fucking matter whether you read Harry Potter or not. You know, like...
Right. Exactly. We're only consumers now. So all of our politics are around what we are consuming. And so, when I get annoyed at fucking all of this stuff, it can sometimes, without proper explanation, it can feel like are you agreeing with the people who are like shooting the Bud Light cans and stuff? It's like, no, I just think that fucking all brands trying to sell me on shit is killing me. I hate
But
this.
that's the other trick. By presenting you with the most lunatic versions of the opposition, it creates this illusion that if you are not 100% on side with your side, quote unquote, you are a traitor. And of course we hate traitors far more than we hate the enemy.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
It's you're letting the side down by not being full voiced, or by voicing doubts, or by complexifying things, or by muddying the waters, or by undermining the strong foundations of the unified front, or whatever it is, because the thing that you're presented with is the most extreme thing, which is what the algorithm is doing. So how much do you think that your hatred of essentialism is to do with the fact that you're a Jew? As a Jew.
As a Jew.
Because I feel like, I have that kind of Jewish thing as well. I don't know if it is a Jewish thing, but like not wanting to be on lists and not wanting to be in categories and not wanting to be identified with or as a thing.
I do think...
It could also be the cross-gendered twin thing.
It could be,
It was always, for me, it was...
It could be that, the fact that I have a twin sister means I'm also part girl. No, but I do actually think that the Jew thing is in there. I mean, not liking to be categorized is, I think, a very Jewish thing for sure. I mean, we're raised to, when you hear about Nazis and like how Nazi Germany categorized every Jew down to the the 1/8 Jew or whatever, the fucking 1/16 part Jewish on their great grandfather's side stuff. You realize that like all this, race essentialism that you see in America sounds similar. It's a lot of like it's like whenever someone's like, hey, should this is probably a bad example, but Gal Gadot playing Cleopatra, she shouldn't play Cleopatra because Cleopatra was Egyptian. And then people start going, well, actually, Cleopatra was Macedonian, which is, fucking Mediterranean, it's fucking close to Greece and all that stuff. So she could have been this color. After a while, it's like, hey, guys, we're getting too skull measury for me. Maybe let's relax on like trying to do a paper bag test to see whether or not Gal Gadot can play fucking Cleopatra. She's gonna be bad at it anyways. What are we doing here?
I remember seeing a really like triumphant thing about Ken Watanabe. I think it was Ken Watanabe playing the king in The King and I. Rather than, the original movie, The King and I, was like Yul Brynner, who was in, Yellowface, and obviously that's outrageous. But like, it's meant to be Siam, not Japan. Like I don't understand why that one is, it's so cringy because it reinforces these hierarchies. If this is always offensive to this kind of person, then this person is always above that kind of person.
Yes.
Which I find cringy.
Yeah, it's like, listen, in general, I obviously think that as a general rule, having white people, and I think use that term generally, right? People who look white, famous white actors playing characters like the King of Siam, probably not good, right? But then patting yourself on the back for being like, we got a Japanese guy and they kind of look the same. Weird. Also weird, you know?
Also
it's
weird.
Just, yes, it's
but better. I don't know if it. I genuinely, I don't actually have an answer for this.
Yeah, I don't know if it's better. I don't know. And then it's yeah. I mean, it's all fucking. It's all a conversation that makes me uncomfortable, and not uncomfortable because it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about, I don't want to acknowledge the existence of race, but it's like, I don't like when everyone feels like they're a race scientist, because race science is like fucking fake. Like, race is a construct, and the problem is that whether or not it's a construct doesn't matter, because there are actual, practical, real life applications of that construct used especially in a system of like white supremacy, right? So it's like, you could say,
and those have knock-on effects.
Yes, they have real life effects. Race is a construct, except for, it is used by oppressors to do oppression. So, is it made up if it has a fucking practical effect? But the in general, like the way people use race as like I don't know, everyone has deputized themselves as kind of like a race scientist a little bit, and I feel like it just makes me feel fucking weird. It makes me feel uncomfortable, and I think it's a Jew thing, because you're just like, why do we, because it's like, I'm white, I'm a white guy, I am a white guy, and like fucking the amount of people who are like Nazis on the internet who are like, you are not a white guy, is like, I'm like, they're the bad guy. Anyone who's just like fucking telling me that Jews aren't white, they're not saying that because they're like, no, because you are a distinct and important person of person of color or whatever. No, they're saying that because they're like, no, you are not a pure, perfect fucking Aryan whatever. And whenever the conversation gets too race sciencey with people who are liberal, I'm like, I understand where you're coming from. You're going, I'm not colorblind, I do see color, but then you're still making the lists that make me uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly what this podcast is for, because this is like a deeply uncomfortable conversation, and because obviously it's better that we're in the midst of this conversation than 200 years ago, where people were like, I know exactly what this I know exactly what everything means. It's better to be having the like awkward, weird conversation. But I think the thing that I find most useful for me when I'm kind of trying to negotiate this stuff and be like, is to think about history. I think history is more important for me. Like, there's periods of history in which the idea of dark and light skin was a gendered thing, because women were indoors and men were outdoors. So the darker you were, the more masculine you were, and the lighter you were, the more feminine you were. So race science was sexism, in such a context that and so like that, I think just knowing that is a thing that existed can kind of clear your mind of the ways in which it accepts the original hypothesis that we're arguing against, the original hypothesis that was invented in order to justify chattel slavery, which is that there are higher and lower races and that they are of different capacities. And then entering that argument, even agreeing to have that argument, means accepting some of those terms.
Right.
It feels like that, even if your argument is that white men are uniquely evil,
right?
It's not true. It's not true. Right. People are people are people, and dominance of Europe in a particular period of time had to do with a number of factors, including the development of technology, which was a direct result of the Black Plague, meaning there weren't enough workers in the field. Like, that's what's important.
Right. Yeah.
And it makes it feel more sane to go like, these coincidences of history led to this power dynamic, which then allowed people to institute this hierarchy, which is now dominating the way we think and exists because of inequalities that then had like knock-on effects in like epigenetics, genetics, money, all of that stuff is real.
Right.
but it didn't come from anything essential.
Right. Yes. And I think it's just people. I think it's a lot of the times, like, identity politics, at least in America, is a reaction to people obviously putting identity politics on people, and then immediately, 1980s rolls around, Jim Crow is over, Reagan is president, and it's like, oh, I'm colorblind. I don't see any race. Everyone is the same. And because of that, we're not going to do anything to address any kind of like, past wrongs we may have done. We're just going to say we're all
I've
equal.
forgiven myself.
I've forgiven myself, and we've all started off on the exact same foot, starting now, which is bullshit, and everyone fucking knows it, which is, why people are like, no, this is, you can say you're colorblind all you want, but the fucking fact is that,
My street has holes in it and yours doesn't. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we've got, like, I think the reaction to that kind of like fake, colorblindness of like conservatives or, whatnot, is to say, no, identity is a facet of my life and it is important. And I think because we now also live in the fucking final stage of capitalism, we are
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We're being sold everything based on the categories that we have assigned either ourselves or have been assigned to us from on high, quote unquote. And so it's like, this is why intersectionality is so fucking important. The problem is that people once again have poison pilled intersectionality. It's like discourse on discourse on discourse just piles up, and you realize that all that discourse was just kind of invented for the purposes of making you mad and making you write fucking comments on Facebook. And so it's like it's this rapidly picking up pace of people like doing analysis and counter analysis and synthesis and all that, until the point at which we're all just dug into whatever fucking lifestyle brand that the marketing algorithm has decided we are based on our behavior, and we're all fucked.
Yeah, it just all feels so weird and upsetting, and I just want to know what to buy to make it feel better.
I know. There is a product for you, though. At MeUndies.com, we sell the best. Yeah.
No, for me, it's half a glass of water.
Yeah. On the plus side, I love my child. I don't know. So that's good.
Yeah. It is a good thing. I am wary of like that idea that becoming a parent changes who you are fundamentally in a way that, like, obviously I talk about parenting more than I did before I had a child, but if I were doing a PhD in a subject, I would be talking about that subject more than anything else. That's because it's the thing that you're paying attention to. And I like to pay attention to what I'm doing. It's that category thing. I don't want to be categorized as just a mother or something.
Yeah. Parenting, I wouldn't say it's fundamentally changed who I am, but it is the one thing it has done that I really like is given me something else to fucking focus on other than myself. And I feel like that was sorely needed. That was actually something that very much went into the not decision to have a family or to have a baby, because like obviously it wasn't, well, I mean, not obviously, but we weren't trying, but we were like not being safe, right? There was no goalie in the net, you know what I mean? Isn't it raw?
You were danger mousing it.
Yeah, I was a danger mouse. But I had thought about it, and I was just like, when my wife told me that she was pregnant, I was like immediately stoked. And I was like, well, that's interesting because I always thought I would be, like, oh fuck, oh god, what am I gonna do? And I realized it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulder because I was like, okay, now I can I can not give as much of a shit about what fucking booker at a bar show hasn't emailed me back yet. I've been like only thinking about myself for like 37 years and it's time to like give a shit about something else other than my fucking career. You know what I mean?
I mean, it does it more than anything else for me. It just is like, oh, I'm not the end of the line. So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I envision my own death quite often.
More
as a
so than ever.
parent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, well, the best case scenario when you have a baby is that they get to watch you die
Oh yeah, that is what
eventually,
you're hoping
right?
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And my friend Nato Green said the great thing, which is that, and if you do it right, that'll be the worst day of their life. And I was like, that's exactly right. You want it to be the worst day of their life. You don't want them to celebrate your death. But yeah, I feel fucking good to not, to not. Yeah, it makes me cut out all the fucking like bullshit that doesn't really matter and focus on the good stuff, and what I like doing. And yeah. Anyways, that's what I have to say.
I think that's a beautiful wrap up to the end of the podcast. I will ask you if you've got anything to plug, anything.
Yeah.
If people enjoyed listening to you, they might also enjoy listening to you on your podcast, which is Pod
Yes,
Yourself the Wire,
that's right. That's right.
and then other things.
Yeah, well, so I do, as Alice said, I do a The Wire rewatch podcast, and I've done Sopranos rewatch podcast. It's all in the same feed, called Pod Yourself a Gun, and you can listen to the Wire podcast that I did with Alice on there. Or if you want to rewatch all the Sopranos, we've done that entire series. Right now, we're up to season 3 on The Wire, and it's gonna keep going. And yeah, fucking, I'm on Instagram at Matt Lieb Jokes. If you want to see pictures of my baby and occasional jokes.
I highly recommend listening to Pod Yourself a Gun. It was my choice of breastfeeding listening back in the day, in
Which
the
is
middle of the night.
fantastic. That is the greatest. That was the greatest compliment I think our podcast has ever gotten. Was that we were just frivolous enough to so you can feed and nourish your child and enjoy yourself, but not feel like you had to complete the whole goddamn thing. I mean, we were just talking about The Sopranos the whole time.
Well, yeah, and also it sort of created this this balance in my heart. So it was either you or reading the Jack Reacher books, and what
Which
I
I
felt like
love.
was I was drawn to sort of The Sopranos is this like essentially masculine thing that men are really into, and I think it really was me trying to find balance in myself between speaking of like categorizing yourself between this essentially feminine act that is like sold as the most
right.
womany thing you can do, and I was like, okay, but as long as I'm reading about a man with hands the size of dinner plates, solving problems with his fists, then I feel
Yes.
okay.
I love that. I love that. You're like, do not categorize me. Yeah, I'm breastfeeding and I'm listening about Tony Soprano eating gabagool. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and having tea with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, do you know her or do you not? This dolphin mistress we have got. Elsie Thompson, it is her name, and she helps the dolphins at every frame. Lousy rifle doll.